Hey tubers, it's a Monday and I just wanted to check in and actually have a bit of a response to the video I just watched on Forget Short Showers. Interesting video, went through a few really cool concepts, but on the whole I must disagree, and I thought I just wanted to talk to you about some of the reasons behind why I disagree. Like, there's definitely, I want to support activism, I want to support any company or any anyone who has new ideas that wants to start something, whether you want to start a non-for-profit, whether you want to start a charity, whether you want to get out there and get active in any form of ethical or moral idea that you support. I really think that's great, and I definitely want to see more of that. I think it's a great thing. But where I feel that the video lacks is potentially, well, it's undermining every single little thing that we do. I accept that we do sometimes need to think, well, hang on, we need to take that pressure off ourselves a little bit as a citizen at the end and say, hang on, not everything that we do has the impact, or all the impacts that are going on in the world, whether that be things to do with climate change, whether that's to do with animal rights, human rights, any way that you want to take any of your ethical ideas and say that they're our fault. But I do think that doing just personal changes, whether that's changes to your diet, changes to the things that you buy, changes to the way that you live and use energy or anything of these other things as well, that will have a big effect. Because first of all, I want to think about your butterfly or your ripple effect. So those people around you, those in your direct network, whether that's friends, acquaintances, workmates, whoever that may be, who understand how you live, or if you talk or you demonstrate, you walk your path on who you are and how you live, that gives then a good reference for people who maybe don't live that way and go, oh, look, well, you do that, so there is reasonable, it's valid. It's not like this is just some idea that people can't live that way. And I think we don't want to undermine that that is actually a really valid way of being a role model on an everyday level. So having that common acceptance and changing those social norms. I know with definitely some of my food choices as well, when you go out there and you're actively involved in your food choices, other people start to consider what they're eating, whether they justify that in any form or another, but they're having the thought. It also changes the way that businesses run. So I'm going to get into that as another stage. So a big point that he brings up and talks about is the idea of that, hey, we're citizens and not consumers, and stop putting that pressure on ourselves. And I completely agree. And there's a lot of reasons to get in and discussing why we should look at citizenship versus consumer, being a consumer, being labeled a consumer. I'm pretty sure there's a couple of good TED Talks on that as well, if you want to go Google that after this. Now, when I think about it, well, yes, we do want to identify as citizens and not just consumers, and not just looking at the way that we spend. Going from there, though, when we do change what we're spending and the way and how much we spend and how much we buy and participate in this consumer activity, we are directly changing the way that companies behave and changing the way that our society behaves. So whether you're purchasing from a company that only supports the ethical and moral decisions that you support, or whether you're only buying the products that follow that protocol from those companies, you're supporting those industries and you're strengthening those revenue lines, which does make a big impact overall, coming from that business perspective. So then if we think about when he was talking about waste, when we're talking about energy consumption, looking at any of those elements, yes, the individual, the citizen use is quite minimal compared to the government use, and then of course the commercial use of all of these products. So whether that be landfill, whether that be water consumption, whether that be energy consumption. But of course, if we're only buying from companies that actively support and manage all of their ethical components in their whole ecology of their company, then those companies are going to do better, and the companies that aren't behaving in that way will have to change their ways to keep on board. So that is a personal decision that changes the way that companies behave. And the same is for governments. There's a really good TED Talk on governments are followers. And for the most part, this is true. Now, of course, governments do have their own agendas, but when we look at when things are changing in society, now governments aren't necessarily going to change when things just tip around that 50% change in consensus throughout a populace, what they're going to do is they're going to wait till they have an overwhelming majority, upwards of 70%, or what's usually called 2/3, so that 67%. Once you get over that 67%, then governments are likely to do what the citizens want on the whole, because they want to make sure when they change a policy that it's going to have good PR, they're going to stay in, it's not going to have backlash. So by spreading our awareness, by living by our values, whichever they may be, then going forward and then sharing that with our friends. And yes, if you take it to the next level and do more activism, that's great, and I really support that. But just doing those things that you do at home, those day-to-day decisions and those day-to-day actions, let's not undermine those, because they have a massive impact towards becoming the 67 or greater percent, which does change governments. Now, there are some things with governments that do need activism, that do need mass adoption, and definitely has gone through a few of them here, like particularly looking at through in the past, so black rights. So when blacks went from being slaves and getting their freedom, that took a lot of activism. And yes, we do need that activism as well. But for a lot of change, not everything is dramatic as that. Yes, there are things that we do need to make a massive impact to get that change. However, I think we really don't want to undermine your efforts that you're making as an individual, and we want to encourage every step, because we know you can't adapt every moral or ethical idea that you want to adapt straight away. You're going to start to bring them on as you find they're easier to start to implement in your life. You're going to pick those that mean the most to you and then continue through and add more. And I really encourage you, and I want to thank you for doing that. I want to thank you for all the great effort that you go towards all of the decisions that are probably against the curve for the most time, and being that force of change in your local groups, in your social groups, in your community groups, and being a great leader and role model to those around who maybe you don't even realize you're being a leader or a role model to. So I'm going to thank you again. If you like what I had to say, subscribe. If you have any questions or anything you want me to talk about or watch and review, just leave a comment. I will do my best to reply to the comments as quickly as possible. Thanks for listening and have a great day. Bye.